welcome the members of the congressional delegation. We had a very productive meeting. A number of leaders of our administration sat in on the meeting. I want to thank Commissioner Bratton for joining us for this gathering as well, and he'll stay with me when we turn to the off-topic questions. Want to thank the Dean of our congressional delegation, Charlie Rangel. I want to thank a member of the House Democratic leadership, Congressman Joe Crowley, and Congress members Hakeem Jeffries, Nydia Velasquez, Jose Serrano, Yvette Clark, Greg Meeks, Carolyn Maloney. Thank them all for working together as we do every day. The Mayor's office and the members of Congress are in constant touch, working in common cause. Want to thank Congressman Dan Donovan as well, who was with us, who, like so many of us, is particularly focused on the Zadroga Act, and I want to talk to you about that today. But I want to emphasize that the close working relationship with the congressional delegation means so much to the people in New York City. This delegation is working in a tough circumstance. We all know the challenges in Washington, D.C. We all know how hard it is to get things done. But nonetheless, the New York City congressional delegation has managed some real victories on behalf of the people of New York City. We want to thank them. We talked about some of the crucial issues and some of the issues that are breaking right now. The transportation bill that's going to have huge ramifications for the future of New York City. And that's a bill where there's a lot that could play out. They'll determine whether it will take us literally backwards or whether we'll finally get the kind of support we need to fix our infrastructure. The situation in Puerto Rico is of concern to so many of us. Urgent humanitarian crisis in the making that we have to see interrupted. We need to see something good happen in Puerto Rico via the right kind of federal action before there's literally a humanitarian crisis, before the finances of Puerto Rico worsen. Big issue of concern for all of us, and something that, again, will play out substantially over the next few weeks. But something that we all feel a particular passion around, and we're all working in common cause on, is the permanent reauthorization of the Zadroga Act. And it's something that means a lot to Commissioner Bratton and all the men and women of the NYPD. It means a lot to Commissioner Nigro, all the men and women of the FDNY. If ever there was something personal to the people in New York City, it's the Zadroga Act. Everyone who's serving currently in our uniformed services understand it, and it's a matter of fundamental fairness, because so many people did the right thing on 9/11 and in the aftermath, but they have not received justice for the kind of service that they provided. More than a month ago, the Congress let the World Trade Center health program expire. If there is not action soon, thousands of our heroes will be left without the medical treatment they need, without the monitoring they need. And again, we are all united. That action is needed right now. It should not, under any concept, be a partisan issue. It's not a red issue, it's not a blue issue. This is truly a red, white, and blue issue. There's no two ways about it. This is a question of patriotism. Are we going to serve those who responded after an attack on our nation? The answer must be yes, and it must be permanent. First responders, it's important to remember, so many of them came from New York City and from the New York metropolitan area, but many, many came from around the country. In the days and weeks after 9/11, it was truly a national response. Amazing statistics that those who participated in the rescue and recovery came from all 50 states over months, and literally all but 2 congressional districts in this nation were represented by people working on the rescue and recovery effort. I've made it my business to try to support and complement the efforts of our Congress members by reaching out to mayors. We have 24 mayors, in addition to county executives and supervisors from around the country, who are supporting us. We've sent this joint letter today to Speaker Ryan asking for action on this issue. Again, we have 24 signatories, mayors, county executives, town supervisors, bipartisan group of leaders from around the country, saying it's not a matter of party, it is a matter of patriotism to help these heroes. And I want to note, mayors, of some of our biggest cities, including Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Boston, among others, have signed on. 14 years ago, we all remember what it felt like, and we all had that feeling that something might be wrong, and then we found out in the years after just what had happened to people exposed to those carcinogens and those toxins. 33,000 first responders, 33,000 have developed 9/11 related illnesses and injuries, a staggering number. And we fear that number will only grow. We have to be there for them. And if we need any more reminder of what this means, we just lost another hero, NYPD Lieutenant Marcy Sims. She worked at Ground Zero for months on the rescue and recovery. A year and a half ago, she contracted lung cancer. And just days ago, we lost her. And our prayers are with her husband, Keith, and their entire family. You know, Marcy is an example of the spirit that those first responders brought. She was known to be someone who wouldn't back down in the face of adversity. She was known as someone who believed it was her job to sacrifice. This is the kind of people we should honor by being there for them. I want to thank all the members of the delegation. I particularly want to credit the extraordinary work of Congresswoman Maloney, Congressman Donovan, Congressman Nadler, Congressman King from Long Island, and Senator Gillibrand. All the delegation has been a part of this amazing effort to fully fund the Zadroga Act and make it permanent, so that over 72,000 first responders and survivors who were there for New York will have their health care going forward. So there are 72,000 reasons why this is the right thing to do, and again, touches literally every corner of the country and should be seen as a national obligation. Before I turn to three of our colleagues, just quick words in Spanish. Hoy me uno a congresistas de Nueva York y a un grupo de 21 alcaldes y líderes municipales de todo el país para pedirle al Congreso que reautorice la ley Zadroga. Esto dará a las más de 72,000 personas que ayudaron a Nueva York y a la nación entera monitoreo y tratamiento médico de enfermedades relacionadas con los ataques de 11 de septiembre. Este es un asunto nacional de justicia para los valientes hombres y mujeres de todo el país que se where's Nydia when I need her? Sacrificaron, there we go, para ayudarnos. Charlie, I'm working on it every day.
I see that.
With that, I want to introduce the Dean of our delegation and thank him for his leadership of the delegation every day, and also thank him for his leadership in the meeting today, Dean Charlie Rangel.
I think I should say mucho gracias, but I'm going to check that out first. It was a good meeting that we've had. The mayor touched on everything that we met with at this meeting. There are details to a whole lot of problems that we will be working together with. But after the briefing that we had, we agreed that when one of our constituents has a problem, for them it's not a federal, state, or city problem. We all have to work together to find solutions. We appreciate the broad briefing that we got from our police commissioner, and also we appreciate the support that the city's providing for the country in making certain that what happened to us in 9/11, our colleagues in the Congress know. God forbid it could happen to them. And so we are talking about protecting our heroes and making certain that they don't have to constantly come back, those that are fortunate enough to live through what they've been through, and beg and ask for assistance. This is something that's not our city's problem, it's a national priority. For our friends and citizens in Puerto Rico, it is hypocritical and embarrassing that people who pay into a system find themselves not being able to get the quality of care merely because they're citizens on an island and not citizens in the city of New York. And when you think the only time we really look at Puerto Rico as being equal is in times of war or in times when they call to fight and defend our country, and Puerto Rico has one of the highest casualties that we've had, and certainly that's been true of the Korean War, and it just doesn't make sense that we have such a crude, embarrassing double standard. As far as transportation goes, we're the greatest city in the world. If we have any fault at all as a delegation, is that we have a little too much self-esteem, then we need to negotiate in Washington. But if this is the safest city, if this is the most attractive tourist designation, then our transportation system is not just for our workers who struggle every day to get to their place of employment, but it's a place where visitors can go and see the whole town at the minimum cost, and we really need the transportation system improved. We need to make certain that our streets are safe, and we'll be working closely with the mayor to make certain that happens. And as we have made it abundantly clear, Upper Manhattan has now become one of the largest tourist destinations, and there's absolutely no reason why our 2nd Avenue subway does not reach Upper Manhattan as we all planned that it has. So this is the beginning of a closer working relationship. Again, I want to thank the mayor and the entire delegation for taking off this morning to plan for how we can work more closely together in the near future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very, very much.
I meant to say mucho gracias.
Muchas gracias. There you go. I want to thank again Congresswoman Maloney for her absolutely passionate and effective and persistent leadership in fighting for a permanent Zadroga Act. It's something we appreciate deeply. I want to welcome Congresswoman Maloney.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for the meeting today, for your support for the 2nd Avenue subway in this budget, and for your national leadership on the reauthorization of the 9/11 Health and Compensation Act. Bringing all the mayors together across this nation is significant and it's important. And I thank Charlie, our dean, and the entire delegation that has made the reauthorization of the Health and Compensation Act a top priority of our bipartisan delegation. In every state and in 233 of the 235 congressional districts, there are first responders, volunteers, and survivors who were there on 9/11 and who participated in the rebuilding after the attacks. And today they suffer from a host of ailments, from cancers, respiratory ailments, post-traumatic stress. That's why over 248 members of the House of Representatives, including over 55 Republicans and 64 United States senators, have co-sponsored a permanent and fully funded extension of the James Zadroga Health and Compensation Act. We know that we lost 3,000 people, almost 3,000 people on 9/11, but many thousands more have died and have become sick because of the deadly toxins that they were exposed to. We learn of new people who are developing ailments they did not know they had because of their work and sacrifice at 9/11. And recently, the Judiciary and Energy Committees of the United States Congress, without discussing it with any member, Republican or Democratic, in our delegation, introduced a bill that caps the money for the program, that limits it to 5 years, and that severely underfunds it. This is unacceptable, and we are united with our mayor, with the mayors hopefully across this country, and with our colleagues in Congress for a permanent reauthorization. And there's still a minority in Congress that want to block it. So it is up to us to continually remind them that this is an American problem. It is not a New York problem. And I'm so pleased that Mayor de Blasio, who has been so supportive of our effort, is taking it to a new level and trying to organize the mayors across America, who represents the towns, the cities, the villages that sent responders, volunteers to help us during that time to get back on our feet. This letter that he has will send a clear message to those in Washington. Never forget is more than a slogan, more than a bumper sticker. It is a sacred promise to take care of those who risk their lives to take care of us. New York, Pennsylvania, and the Pentagon were the scenes of the crime. But what happened on 9/11 was an attack on every American, and we all have a responsibility to help those who will bear the wounds of that day for their lives. They live in every corner of our great nation, and they need our help. For the past 14 years, we have devoted our time and energy to protecting the health and well-being of the heroes and heroines of 9/11. 5 years ago, we were very, very proud to pass the James Zadroga Act for our first responders and survivors. We knew at the time that 5 years would never be adequate to answer for the sacrifices of those heroes. Many of the heroes and heroines of 9/11 have made countless trips to Washington to lobby in support of the bill. They should not have to do this in the first place. And that is why this year we must rally the support of a grateful nation, break through the hard-heartedness of some in Washington, and deliver for these men and women who still suffer the care and compensation that they so justly deserve. I thank the mayor. I thank the mayors across America. I particularly thank my colleagues who are leading and joining in this effort. We have an omnibus bill that must be passed on December 11th, and the James Zadroga bill must be part of that bill. So I thank him for his leadership on this and in so many other areas, and we will never forget and turn this determination into the reality of health care for the heroes and heroines. Cancer doesn't know a 5-year limit. It's there permanently. The illnesses don't know a 5-year limit. It's there permanently. And we must permanently give the health care to the heroes and heroines that they so justly deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very powerfully said. Thank you, Congresswoman. I want you to hear finally from a member of the House Democratic leadership, and it means a lot to New York City that he is. Before I bring up Joe Crowley, I just want to answer the question. No, Tish James did not get elected to Congress in the last 5 minutes. She is still our public advocate, but we welcome her. And we thank her for support on the Zadroga bill in particular. But Joe Crowley is in a position to do a lot for New York City because of his leadership position, and he does that every day. He's a constant colleague in so many of the things we do, and I know he feels particularly passionately about the Zadroga Act as well. Congressman Joe Crowley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for calling this meeting amongst the delegation from the city to the Congress. I think we were all here enthusiastically this morning to hear your thoughts about what we can be doing better and doing together to forward the issues that we're great concern about. I know that was mentioned earlier, the transportation bill, ensuring that we continue to get the funding that we need to maintain our mass transit system as well as our roads, bridges, and tunnels. Mr. Mayor, you may not know, but there's a target on the back of New Yorkers in many respects as it comes to transportation. And this delegation is dedicated to seeing that New York City continues to get its fair share. I know as well the issue of Puerto Rico is an issue that New York is linked to. We have a tremendous history and linked to the people of Puerto Rico. And I know that Nydia Velasquez, as well as Joe Serrano and Charlie Rangel, are working nonstop to ensure that Puerto Rico is treated like any other municipality and state would be treated in terms of being able to restructure their debt. And we know, Mr. Mayor, with your influence and your continued speak out on this issue, we will have a resolution that meets the needs of the people of Puerto Rico and many of their relatives who live here in this great city. And lastly, Mr. Mayor, let me just say about the Zadroga Act. You, I think, struggled with the word. I think it meant sacrifice. Whether it's in Spanish or English, people understand the notion of sacrifice and the sacrifice that was made on that fateful day 14 years ago. And I would suggest that Officer Sims and the sacrifice that she made 14 years later is no different than the sacrifice of my cousin John Moran 14 years ago, or any other of the first responders who died that day. In many respects, it may have been more of a sacrifice for the last 14 years that she has suffered, and not necessarily knowing whether or not her country would be there to help meet her needs and her family's needs. So I think it's important that the media understand that the continuation of loss that we are sustaining, not only here in New York City, but around the country because of the effects of the attack on 9/11 are ongoing. And that's why it's important that we pass a permanent extension to the Zadroga Act. I've said on the floor of the House of Representatives, no colleague of mine, Democrat or Republican, should use the term never again until they are first ready to respond to the needs of the victims of that attack now and in the future, permanently. And I will restate that again. On the floor of the House of Representatives, I call on my Republican colleagues and Democratic colleagues never to use that term, never again, until we meet the needs of the individuals who suffered so greatly that day and continue to suffer. We met with Carolyn's leadership, John Stewart, and he brought with him a number of individuals who are suffering today with stage 4 cancers, people who are suffering from lung diseases. And unless we can look them in the face and say we're helping to take care of you and your needs, we should never use that term, never again. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your leading this effort as well.
Thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to take questions related to the Zadroga Act and any of the other topics we talked about with the congressional delegation, and then we'll go to off-topic questions. So first, related to this meeting. I'll start, and if any of my colleagues want to join in. I think Congressman Donovan is a great colleague. He obviously already has a very positive working relationship with the other members of the delegation. I've had the opportunity to work with him over the years, and I think it's very, very important that his voice will be heard in the other conference, where we obviously need to sensitize more and more of the members to the fact that people are suffering and this help is deserved, that these are heroes who deserve support. So I think he's playing a very, very valuable role.
We have a serious problem with the minority of the majority in the House of Representatives, but it's abundantly clear that in the New York State delegation, both Congressman Donovan and Congressman Peter King recognize they have a high responsibility to our city and our state than partisan politics.
Specifically on Zadroga, the very, very first bill that Mr. Donovan placed his name on was the James Zadroga Health and Compensation Act. We now have 57 Republicans on that bill, and that is largely because of his efforts and Peter King's efforts to reach out to their colleagues. They have had numerous meetings with the leadership in the House of Representatives, the Republican leadership, and also with the two committee chairmen. I've seen them working on the floor, and they are working as we speak to try to pass this important bill and other measures that are important to our great city.
Okay, other topics from the congressional meeting? Yes. A little louder, please. Okay, on the Puerto Rican debt crisis, was there a specific plan of action? So let me start and then pass to Nydia and anyone else who wants to join in. When I was in Puerto Rico on Thursday, I had a long meeting with Governor Garcia Padilla about the ways that people here in New York City and all 50 states can support Puerto Rico. One of the things I'm going to be working on again is to get mayors organized to support action. There's no question that the president's plan would address both the immediate financial crisis and the problem with Medicaid. So we have a clear roadmap on the table. I think it's about developing maximum support for the president's vision in as much of the country as possible.
Yes, we do have a specific proposal from the White House. It has 4 pillars that basically provides the relief that Puerto Rico needs. One is debt bankruptcy protection. Puerto Rico enjoyed bankruptcy protection from 1933 to 1984. When Congress passed reform on bankruptcy, they excluded the territories. So what we are saying is that Congress changed the rules of the game in terms of Puerto Rico. The other element that is so important is Puerto Ricans, as American citizens, they pay the same taxes that we here pay regarding Medicare and Medicaid, and therefore they are entitled to parity when it comes to allocation of federal funding that would allow for Puerto Rico to have access to quality health care. And then they're suggesting a control board that will guarantee that measures that need to be in place in order to have negotiations going on that are part of this of this proposal. What we are asking is for Congress to act. Chairman Goodlatte is the chairman of the judiciary, and we are asking, and we are grateful that the mayor and the governor were in Puerto Rico to express their solidarity with the people of Puerto Rico. There's going to be a call to action on December 2nd because we're going to have probably a CR or an omnibus bill on December 11th, and we expect for any or all of these elements of the proposal from the White House to be included. And so we're going to have hundreds of people coming from across the country to lobby members of Congress.
Congressman Serrano.
Yes, I think the important part that Nydia mentioned is that as the only New York City member of the Appropriations Committee, I can tell you that in this omnibus bill that we will have, that will include a Christmas tree of items, there's no reason why we can't include the whole package that has been presented by the President Obama's administration, which covers the needs of Puerto Rico. In other words, it needs legislating. It cannot be something that he does by executive order at this point. It needs legislating. So we think that the best way to legislate it, since time is running out, is to include it in the larger bill. And at the same time, we want to thank the mayor and the governor for their leadership and their solidarity with the people of Puerto Rico. You know, growing up here, I came when I was 6 years old. The joke always was, and maybe it wasn't a joke, that New York was Puerto Rico's largest city. And so it continues to be so, and vice versa. We will continue to fight this. But again, if anybody wants to write about it and help us, the way to help us is we have till December 11th to include the whole administration package in the omnibus bill, which is the only bill that must pass before the end of the year or the government shuts down.
Look, I don't think inert is at all the case. I think that's a misunderstanding of how the Congress works. I think there's a lot of relationships across party lines. I think Zadroga is a great example of that. And we just have to be clear that even with some of the problems that exist in the Republican Party in the House, there's still work going on every day that crosses party lines and gets something done for New York City. And I think there's also a lot of fight in terms of making sure that we're going to constantly look for every opportunity to expand the presence of the Democrats in the House. So I'm not sure I think the premise of the question is fair, Congressman.
I don't think the premise of the question is fair, actually, but I appreciate the question. I think one only has to look at the recent passage of the Ex-Im Bank extension as an example of Democrats really driving the agenda on that issue. And there are a myriad of issues, and too long a list to go into, whether it's the stopping the shutdown of government, that Democrats were so much a part of in the House of Representatives. But aside from that, the Democratic leadership, and I want to applaud Nancy Pelosi for making this passage of the permanent extension of the Zadroga Act a part of our agenda in the House of Representatives. In bicameral meetings with our Democratic counterparts in the Senate, along with Chuck Schumer, it's also a very important and paramount issue moving forward. And in that legislative body, as you know, it's clear that Democrats have an incredible role to play. So this is not just the House of Representatives, it's the Senate as well. It's the entire Congress that we're calling upon in terms of extension, a permanent extension of the Zadroga Act. But Democrats in the House, we have a role to play. We know what it is, and we've been very effective at it.
Okay, Emily.
What's your read on how Speaker Ryan will respond to the letter that you sent to him regarding the Zadroga Act? How does it help to have sort of broad support across party lines, across borders as well into Long Island?
I think the bipartisan support from the New York metropolitan region is incredibly helpful. I think the fact that mayors and other local leaders from around the country are speaking up, and again in a bipartisan manner, is very, very helpful. I want to assume that that's something that Speaker Ryan would care about and would pay attention to. I think he has shown in many instances a willingness to work with people of different viewpoints constructively. So again, I'll let my colleagues who know the situation better speak to it, but I'm hopeful that he'll listen.
Let me just say, Charlie and I have had the pleasure of working with Mr. Ryan on the Ways and Means Committee. I also was elected with Paul Ryan in 1998. I've known him all that time. I think we have to give him an opportunity to get his feet wet in terms of his new position. But I suspect that when given the arguments, especially in a bipartisan approach, with Peter King's support, with Dan Donovan's support, and that's not the only support. We have enormous support in New Jersey and other parts of the country as well, that Mr. Speaker Ryan will come to the conclusion that it's the right thing to do to extend this Zadroga Act permanently.
Okay, on the topic of this meeting, yes.
I would assume that most people who are ill from 9/11 have some kind of insurance. First responders or working for a company that worked on the recovery effort. So is this being intended to indemnify the municipalities, or is it actually intended to pay for the medical care of individuals who are already insured?
Yeah, I think the point is that their insurance, depending on who they are, doesn't cover everything. And second, it's about the monitoring. But if one of the Congress members would like to speak to the details.
Also, if you have your own private insurance, that helps pay for it. But what the 9/11 bill has done, it has created specific health centers across this nation. We have one at Mount Sinai, we have one in Staten Island, we have one in Bellevue, we have one in Queens and Brooklyn. We have these specific centers that respond to the illnesses that are unique to 9/11, to the scarring of the lungs, the type of diseases that they have never seen before, and particularly the respiratory and the lung diseases that they're horizontal scarring that is unique to this, and it's treatment that are unique to it. I just met 2 weeks ago with a firefighter who had been he was misdiagnosed and was really suffering until he finally was referred by the fire department to Mount Sinai, that then said his illness was definitely 9/11 related. And what we're seeing now is that many people can be well, particularly on the front line, which were police and fire. They were there from the very beginning. Many thought that they were well. Just 4 weeks ago, we had a meeting in Washington, and one man came up to me. He said, "I used to come here all the time with my colleagues to support them. Now I have stage 4 cancer, and they're telling me I'm going to be dead in 6 months." And he thought he was well. He thought he was just helping his other colleagues. So it's a very unique illnesses that people are having. It's also part of a research effort. It's probably the largest and most important environmental health program in the nation, probably in the world. You have people from all over the world watching this response to what was an environmental cause for these illnesses that are totally unique. So there's a lot of important scientific research associated with it, specific treatments for the 9/11 illnesses that are unique, and you'd be surprised how many people don't have the coverage and support that they need. And a lot of people, once you become ill, you lose your private insurance. If you drop out of the workforce because you're ill, you no longer have it. So it's a safety net that works with whatever systems are there to provide the health care to really the people who so justly deserve it. They were there for us. We need to be there for them.
Thank you. Well, we certainly had a discussion on how to fight crime and the role that guns play in it. Commissioner Bratton gave a detailed assessment of our crime-fighting efforts. We all know that so much of what's afflicting this city is guns from other parts of the country. And we know that we need fundamental change on the federal level to address that. I'm preaching to the converted with these colleagues here who all share that view. We understand that's going to take a lot more work nationally to achieve some of those changes. Anyone else want to add to that? Okay. Last call about this. Yes.
Well, personally, who are you writing for? I'm curious. Pardon me? 1010 Wednesday? Okay. Personally, I believe that that many, the opponents, now that the people who put these bills in did not vote for the first Zadroga bill. Goodlot didn't vote for it, and others didn't vote for it that are behind this particular effort. And I think they were surprised at our success, quite frankly. I'm surprised. It took us 9 years to pass the first Zadroga bill, and it was a top priority of this delegation, and we worked every single week on it. But we have well over 245 co-sponsors. It's huge. If the bill went to the floor tomorrow, it would pass. It would pass under regular order. So I think that when they saw that this steamroller was coming, that they threw something in to muck up the works, and they put in their own two bills without talking to Peter King, who has been a lead sponsor on this bill, or Mr. Donovan from their side of the aisle, or any of us. No one. They just threw it in on the day that Ryan was elected, hoping no one would notice or no one would write about it. Well, the minute we saw it, the way it's drafted in a way to kill the program. For example, the pay for the health program is to cut Medicare. Believe me, no Democrat, and very few people in Congress are going to go to the floor of Congress to cut Medicare to pay for another program. Medicare is a vital, needed program. And the health and compensation piece, they cut it by 60%. Retroactively, so that people that have been given grants are going to have their grants cut dramatically. And then they capped the program so that only a limited number of people could be served. We want every police officer, fire officer, volunteer, whoever worked there to get the member of the press. Many members of the press are sick that work down there. So we want everybody to be covered. So I think that this was an effort to really defeat our efforts, but we came back even stronger and even more determined. And I believe that the mayor's effort is very, very important, because we have to remember it's not a New York challenge. It is an American challenge. These men and women were on there was the worst terrorist attack in the history of our country. And innocent people went to work and were murdered, and people came from all around the country, and they are sick. It was an attack on America, and the efforts of the mayor speaking out across America underscores that fact that it's America's challenge. We need to take care of our injured. These men and women are injured. But December 11th, we need to have it in the omnibus must-pass bill, and we need to speak out each and every day until that day to make sure that it's part of it. And our heroes and heroines shouldn't have to worry about whether or not they're going to have their health care, their specialized health care for the specialized illnesses that they're suffering from.
Last call on this meeting, please.
There are always discussions. There are always discussions, and there's always negotiations, and there's always another day, and there's a way to get things done, and we're trying every single way that we possibly can to get this done because it will save lives. If this bill is not reauthorized, people will die. Heroes and heroines will die. And we know that since 9/11, thousands have died from the illnesses. And as my colleague Joe Crowley pointed out, the illness that you get from the exposure is just as deadly as dying that day. You should have all the help we can possibly give these people. And I got to tell you, God forbid, and we did have an extensive, a very reassuring discussion with Police Commissioner Bratton on how we are working every day to protect our citizens. We know that we remain a terrorist target. We are. And we've done a brilliant job making sure that no one broke through to hurt Americans again. But God forbid that we are attacked again. Our responders have to know that we're going to be there with their health care and their compensation for their loss of livelihood and their loss of their lives. So it's a very, very important program for the future of our country and not only just responding to the heroes and heroines of 9/11.
And on that point, Mr. Ryan has called for regular order. And as Carolyn has mentioned, this bill has enough support, bipartisan support, to pass on its own. If Mr. Ryan is true to his word about regular order, bring this bill to the floor and watch it pass overwhelmingly.
Excellent. All right, I want to thank all the members of the congressional delegation for their great work on this and so many issues. And we will now thank you very much. Thanks to all the members of Congress. And now Commissioner Bratton and I will stick around. If you have any questions on the incident this morning, Commissioner Bratton and his team are here. We can start with that and then go into other issues from there. Please. Louder, please. I think the NYPD is doing a remarkable job driving down crime yet again. Again, overall crime down 3% compared to last year. Last year was a record year. Shootings down, gun arrests up 7%. NYPD is doing extraordinary things. And I think it's quite clear that many, many guns are being taken off the street and many criminals are being taken off the street. I'll let the commissioner go from there.
We briefed the congressional delegation this morning on the facts. The facts are that shootings are down as of 6 o'clock this morning. Homicides are up about 19 against last year's record low number. As the mayor's referenced, overall crime at the end of this year we predict will be down about 3%. It will be the lowest amount of crime, index crime, ever reported, going back to around 1963. So the city is very safe and getting safer all the time. There will be incidents, as we saw this morning, certainly, but the ability to very quickly investigate those incidents, resolve them, and hopefully put people behind bars where they need to be that commit violent acts in the city will go a long way toward continuing to reduce violence in the city. I don't believe that criminals feel comfortable walking around the city armed with firearms. I think the story that's being promoted that somehow or another, because we have consciously reduced our activities, such as stop, question, frisk, consciously reduced some of our summons activity, that is emboldening them. I don't see that we're seeing with the fewer stops, with the fewer summonses, that we are stopping the right people, as reflected by the fact that gun arrests, individual arrests of individuals carrying guns, are up 7%. You have widely reported in the media just these last couple of weeks, officers on quality of life enforcement, which is an essential part of what we do, whether stopping somebody for drinking a beer, somebody urinating, somebody occupying more than 2 seats in a subway train, somebody not paying their fare. We are consistently basically getting the right people. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on this morning first, just while we have the commissioner? Yes.
We had done a press briefing with many of you this morning that shortly after the event, Chief Bob Boyce, Chief of Detectives, can update you on the status of that investigation, which has moved forward very, very quickly. Bob.
Good morning. Just after 6 this morning, 3 individuals were sitting inside a McDonald's at 498th Avenue. They were having coffee, it seems. At one point, 2 individuals came in and engaged them in conversation. Those individuals left, and then the 3 left thereafter. Those 3 individuals who ended up being shot were fouled into the subway. We have that on videotape right now, where 4 shots were fired, striking all 3. 1 was deceased on the scene from a gunshot. Right now, we believe the motive is possibly narcotics. That's an active narcotics location that we've made 52 arrests so far this year in front of and inside that McDonald's. So that's why we believe our motive right now is narcotics. But that's preliminary. We're about 6 hours into the investigation. We have witnesses there giving us information as well. So as we go forward into the day, we'll have more information as we go forward. Yes, it was. It has really nothing to do with the subway. They followed them down into the subway, which is just steps.
Entrance, just to clarify, the steps or the entrance? Or?
Is maybe 20 feet away from the McDonald's as it is. That's it.
Okay, on this, yeah.
Surveillance video takes many hours to pull down, but we have witnesses from that area that are giving us descriptions of the perpetrators. We're looking for a total of 2 that walked into the McDonald's, both with their hoods up, so identification is going to be a little bit rough at this point. But we think we're on very good ground going forward in the investigative front.
Okay, any other questions for Commissioner Bratton or Chief Boyce? Grace?
Sure.
Boyce can update you on that.
Yeah, we have a video that depicts the entire event. It's a robbery of one of our detectives who's on the street involved in another case. We believe that robbery of the detective last night has nothing to do with the case they're involved in right now. We'll release the video sometime later today of the apprehension by the detective and his partners. We have statements from both perpetrators that we arrested last night stating their complicity in the robbery. We also are closing out a robbery pattern with 4 cases in it that these individuals also did. And what they're doing is stealing cell phones from people in the street. 2 of the individuals gave a complete confession to it. All right, the male that was involved in the shooting had a BB gun. I think we put out pictures on that last night, very realistic. The officer fired 1 round. That individual is not likely to die, and he gave a complete confession. And he also confessed, self-identified to another robbery that we're looking at him for. So this is a cell phone robbery pattern within Bedford-Stuyvesant.
March?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to show you and the Commissioner a picture that was taken on Saturday night on Broadway and 68th Street. It's a homeless person with 2 dogs, a cat, kitty litter, dog food, and I'm wondering why nobody's done anything about it, the police or the city.
March, again, anytime we get a report of a site, we act on the site. There were 21 full-blown encampments where people were living for years, doing drugs, sleeping overnight. Those have been dismantled by the NYPD working with Department of Homeless Services. There was a report the other day in Soho that was resolved within 24 hours. When we see something that shouldn't be there, we act on it. Now, as Commissioner Bratton has said, there are other circumstances where, because of constitutional rights, the police cannot always remove someone. For example, someone begging in front of a deli cannot be removed. But when we see something that reaches the level of being a violation of law, NYPD moves in and acts. Would you like to add?
The picture, Marcia, that you showed would be something that, by understanding, would be possible for our officers to actually act upon. That individual's not sitting there by himself. He's taking up significant public sidewalk space. So if somebody were to have called and complained about him, our officers could have removed him. So what we're also doing with our precinct commanders is conducting and continuing education campaign on the nuances of the laws that the officers have to work with to enforce. And they are nuances, very fine nuances. But in terms of the picture you just showed me, that would be somebody clearly who would have no right to be basically occupying that sidewalk space. That you can see that repeated in a number of locations around the city with the animals, etc., which is for the beggars. That's an additional inducement to people to give. My best advice to the citizens of New York City: if this is so upsetting to you, don't give. One of the quickest ways to get rid of them is not to give to them. And so New Yorkers who are complaining so much about it, well, one of the things they can do is stop contributing to it.
Let me add, Marcia, it's upsetting every time, and that's why we've moved people out of 21 separate encampments. It was absolutely unacceptable, not anything that should have been tolerated in modern civilization. Those were taken down. Anytime we see a report of something like this, NYPD and Homeless Services moved in, and both to restore the quality of life for everyone who lives in the area, but also to get services to the people involved. So this is not something that any community should have to live through, but it's also important that we reach the people. If they need mental health services, if they need drug abuse or substance services, we get them to them. Look, we also know a lot of people who end up in shelter. We're proud of the fact we got 38,000 people out of shelter and into housing. We've got a lot more to do. But the bottom line is, if we see a situation like this, it will be dealt with. Go ahead, Aaron. I'll start and turn over to the Commissioner. Look, that is under investigation, so I don't want to specifically speak to whether those facts are accurate. We have an aggressive approach to the Taxi and Limousine Commission to inhibit anyone from working more hours than they should. It's important that we keep those limits in place because it is about the safety of our people. So we need to know a lot more about what happened in this case, but TLC is doing a lot to try and address this problem, and we'll be doing more. Anything you want to add?
In reference to the issue in general of pedestrian fatalities, fatalities of individuals involved in auto accidents, I would point out that like crime, we have spikes up, we have spikes down. You have to look at it in the longer term context of the annual. And so we anticipate that at the end of this year, the Vision Zero initiative, that there will be fewer pedestrian fatalities than there were last year. There will be fewer vehicle-related fatalities than there were last year, which was a record low year. And that the men and women of the NYPD, the summons activity that they engage in support of Vision Zero, that those summonses are up by the tens of thousands this year. So the activity of the city focused on this issue is to continue to try to deal with it. But there will be periods of time, as we certainly experienced this last week, where we saw a spike going up. And my expectation is over time, we're going to see the spikes overall going down.
There's no question about that. Just a quick addition. Vision Zero is working. We saw it last year, the fewest pedestrian deaths in over 100 years. We see it continued improvement this year, but there's much more to come on Vision Zero. I want to emphasize that. There's a lot more intersections and streets that are going to be redesigned. There's a lot more enforcement coming. NYPD has done an outstanding job on enforcing against speeding and against people driving and not yielding to pedestrians. This has just begun. This is an effort that's a little more than a year old and is yielding real results, but there's much more to come. Yes. Look, a part of why I care so deeply about Vision Zero is it's clear a lot of these fatalities have been our seniors and our children. That's what we've seen over and over again. And that's why I think the public embraced Vision Zero. A lot of people thought they wouldn't. They did because they saw it as safety for children and safety for seniors, among other things. The fact is, Vision Zero has started to affect people's behavior. We're going to do a lot more public education, but some of the best public education is done by the NYPD. When people see there are real consequences for speeding, real consequences for failing to yield to pedestrians, and they get a serious fine for that, when they see that police officer pulling them over, that changes people's behavior. We're going to keep doing that. Great. Again, I think we clearly have seen that Commissioner Pont's vision for reducing violence at Rikers is working as he has implemented it facility by facility. It's based on proven approaches he's used elsewhere. The situation at Rikers was unacceptable the day we walked into office. It's still unacceptable. There's going to be a lot more done. But I believe we're on the right track to reduce the use of force properly and to get away from things like punitive segregation. Yeah. I'm not sure that's how I would say it. Let me say, I want to, could you hold that? I just want to see if there's anything else for Commissioner Bratton that's related, and then we'll come right back to you. Anything else related to policing? Rich?
Given the direction the investigation seems to be taking in regard to the downing of the Russian jet, any special protections contemplated Russian associated facilities in New York?
Rich, one of the things that Deputy Commissioner Miller and his people are very good at with their critical response command, their vehicles, is whenever we have an incident that we quickly analyze and move resources to provide additional security till we understand what's happening if it relates to a specific country. And that has certainly been the case with the various Russian facilities here in our city. If ISIS, in fact, was targeting them, which some of the chatter would seem to indicate was the intent, if in fact there was a bomb on that plane. So that's one of the benefits of the system that was created by my predecessor, which we've continued and are now expanding. As you know, we're going to be assigning almost 500 officers full-time to critical response to deal with just the comment you made. The idea, if something happens, that we've got highly trained people that will have very specific intelligence information to work with. So we have no indication that any of what's going on over there is basically being directed back here in New York, but we'll always err on the side of caution. Okay.
Let me just start on this.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me see. First of all, we have not seen the bill. Look forward to seeing it. We've obviously worked closely with Senator Golden on many issues. From what little I know about it, it is a different approach than the one we've talked about, the one that is supported by Chief Judge Lippman and DA Vance and a number of others, which would be to allow judges to consider dangerousness in bail determinations and require judges to consider dangerousness in diversion decisions. So what I'm promoting is something I think is a fundamental reform needed in this state that would have had a huge impact had it been in place before the attack on Officer Holder. We have to look at what Senator Golden has put forward. It's a different concept, and then we'll be able to give you a judgment on it.
I met with Senator Golden up in my office last week. He was up on a number of legislative matters. Did not go into the specificity of the bill that you're referring to. I have not seen either the bill, its language, or its specificity, so I can't speak to it. That quite clearly we are looking for reforms in the bail system, particularly the one that public safety is taken into consideration. And also I'd like to see the district attorneys getting back into the mix also on some of these bail considerations. But the good news is there seems to be a lot of momentum to review it and a lot of momentum to change it and change it for the good.
Amen. Again, I'll turn to the Commissioner by saying I think there has been an ever-growing effort by the NYPD, and you heard the numbers, how many more tickets have been given for speeding compared to in the past, how many more tickets for violations of where there's failure to yield to pedestrians. I think NYPD is doing something transcendent in terms of going at these kind of crimes, and it's changing drivers' behavior. So I think it's been very aggressive and effective, and again, more to come.
The issue of reckless drivers is one of the many that we're attempting to address, whether it's speeding, reckless behavior, drunken driving, that the whole gamut of issues is the focus of Vision Zero, as well as our traffic-related enforcement efforts. We have continued to seek to expand the highway patrol personnel to help on the city's expressways, as well as increasing effort within the precincts of the city, particularly those that are being most impacted by some of the traffic accidents. And to that extent, we've increased the number of personnel that investigate those accidents so we can seek to learn from them as far as our enforcement activity. Do we need to do more in certain precincts and in other precincts because of what you're referencing, that we see a higher level of reckless driving or higher level of driving under the influence?
Yeah.
I actually think the morale of the officers is pretty well. Are they unhappy about the pay issues? They certainly are. That's been expressed by Mr. Lynch. He rolled the dice and he lost on this roll of the dice. That's quite clear. As far as morale, that we're doing an awful lot for morale of the officers in this department. We've totally changed the discipline system. We have responded with all new bulletproof vests to make sure that they all have them within the 5-year liability. We are continually increasing the equipment they get to work with, the smartphones, the training. We're in the process of cleaning up every one of our 77 precincts for the first time in history. And over the next several years, we'll be replacing all the bathrooms and locker rooms. We're buying larger size vehicles. We have increased by thousands of positions, the volunteer positions in the department that are oftentimes morale motivators. So the 500 officers going into CRC, the 800 officers going into SRG, the approximately 500 to 600 officers that are going to be NCOs, the approximately 600 officers that are field training officers. Those are all voluntary assignments that are much sought after. So I think we're doing quite well in addressing the morale issues of the department. Pay issues are something I don't basically directly impact on. But again, that as far as everything else that they've expressed concern about, we are addressing.
And I'd finally note the Commissioner has done a great job working with Chair Emery on ensuring that CCRB handles complaints in a much different way than in the past in terms of timeline. I know officers were very concerned that a CCRB complaint could drag on for a very long time. I know the folks who brought the complaints from the community felt the same way. Now the average disposition is 9 months. That is something that's a profoundly important reform and also something that speaks to the concerns of officers. Okay, you're off. I want last call on anything related to the Commissioner.
We briefed the congressional delegation this morning on that. We project that by the end of this year, there will have been 1 million fewer what I would describe as negative interactions, enforcement actions by members of my department. That includes a 95% reduction stop, question, frisk, reduction by tens of thousands of marijuana possession only arrests, that we are making a concerted effort to have our officers act appropriately when dealing with what they understand is a crime being committed or has been committed. So that peace dividend which I talk about, I think is of great benefit to my officers. They're not needlessly getting engaged in negative interactions with the public, of great benefit to the public, certainly, that was complaining very loudly about them. And I think the statistics speak for themselves, that we at the end of this year will end this year with the safest year in the history of this city. 100,000 Part 1 crimes, and maybe even have the ability to get below that. And overall crime continuing to go down. And that's what it's all about, improved citizen satisfaction. Referencing also CCRB. Complaints to CCRB are down in double digits. I think it's around 24%. And early on statistics that we're gathering from our pilot precincts, the neighborhood precincts that we're remodeling with our NCOs, some of those precincts, civilian complaints are down by 66% in the short period of time that we've been involved. So no, I think we're very much on the right track to not only bridge the gap between the public and the police, particularly that portion of the public that really feels that the police have not been responsive to their concerns. I think we have the real ability to close that gap, rather not just bridge it.
And on top of that, that time and energy freed up through that peace dividend is going to fighting more serious crimes. Look at the 7% increase in gun arrests. Look at the decrease in shootings. There's a direct correlation, and I think this commissioner's done and his team have done a fantastic job of continuing to, in the spirit of ComStat, move resources where the need is greatest, and you see it now playing out in more and more gun arrests. Okay, you're after long experience, you're free to go fight crime.
I'm going to lunch.
Okay. Right. Again, what I said before, I feel deeply. The first responsibility for this crisis is in the European Union. I think they have to do a lot more. But I think it's obvious that the United States has to set an example. We have in many situations before, and New York City has to be a part of it. It is something that has generated tremendous feeling across a lot of different communities of this city, because this is one of the worst humanitarian crises we've seen in quite a while. Just the numbers are staggering. So New York City will find a way to do something meaningful here and send a message all around the world that everyone has to be part of the solution. I think one of the most poignant examples is when His Holiness took refugees into the Vatican. That was part of sending a message to the whole world that everyone has to be a part of the solution. Obviously, we have a first obligation to our own people, but we have to participate in other important things. We can do both. Yes. I know that, like Borough President Otto, I am frustrated because we need the USDA to act so we can take the next steps. We want to address this problem. I understand it's very frustrating for Staten Islanders, and there's real safety issues and real issues for homeowners. So we want to get this changed, and we have a plan in the making, but it requires the USDA to act. So we're going to keep pushing them hard to get that done. I haven't even looked at that situation, though it's premature.
Mr. Mayor, you said recently 177,000 jobs created in New York City since you took office. How many of those would you attribute to your public policies?
I've spoken about this before. The private sector, by and large, creates those jobs. What we in government do at the local level is create an environment that makes it conducive. What Commissioner Bratton just talked about. Obviously, the fact that we had reduced crime in 2014 and we again are having reduced crime in 2015 is part of what creates an atmosphere for job creation. What we're doing to improve our schools, and I've heard from a lot of people in business how much they appreciate, for example, full-day pre-K for all or computer science for all. What we're doing to improve our infrastructure, all of these pieces contribute to job creation. But in the end, I understand the folks who create the jobs are the individual companies. We're running out of time. Let's do a couple more.
There have been some applications put in to throw a music festival this summer at Flushing Meadows Park in Queens. I think a company from California and Madison Square Garden are interested. Just wondered if you were familiar with that.
Familiar, but we have only begun the process to assess. So no decisions have been made. I think the company involved has probably overstated the situation a bit. It's an idea that's been put on the table. Even the initial analysis has not been done. So we really can't weigh in on that until Parks Department takes a real look at it and determines what it would mean. Last call. Yeah, we are going to make very substantial changes in terms of the flow of information between NYPD and NYCHA, which has been insufficient, and that's been true for a long time. And in terms of doing the background checks necessary for the follow-up on any individuals that we think should not be in a development. Look, I think this was tolerated for many, many years. I won't tolerate it. That we cannot have people who have committed crimes and are dangerous in developments. Now again, like many other things, there may be some people who did nonviolent offenses, low-level offenses, that's a different matter, but violent criminals like Tyrone Howard should not be in NYCHA developments. It's as simple as that. there are due process rights, there are federal rules, there's a number of things that do have to be navigated, but we have to do it more effectively. And part of it is we have to have a tighter coordination between the NYPD and NYCHA. And I know that Chair Olataye is devoted to getting that done quickly, and as is Commissioner Bratton. So this is an area where I know we can get a lot more done. But the bottom line is that any resident of a public housing development that worries about a violent criminal in their midst, they're right. That violent criminals shouldn't be there. And we're going to use every power we have to exclude them. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.